Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Blog live stream. Rob Staten, Adam, and Robbie here with you today because we've got a few things to discuss. If you want to join in via the live chat, you can do. Send us a super chat. We'll put it up on the screen. If you have a take on anything that we are going to get into today. So training camp is well and truly underway. They had the mock game yesterday. What did they call it? Fat Football Fest or something? They gave it a funky name. So that's going on, and there's a few talking points within the team to discuss. But fellas, the thing that I wanted to get onto first, because this has been sort of a growing talking point this week. It's not often that you have two really big names in the NFL who request a trade. So Terry McLaurin was the first to request a trade from the Commanders. They traded for Deebo Samuel this year and then reworked his contract. And for whatever reason, they haven't done anything with Terry McLaurin, despite the fact he's a beloved member of the team. He is a captain. He's the heart and soul of the Commanders in that locker room. And they have plenty of cap space because they've got a quarterback on a rookie contract and they have aging players on short-term contracts. It makes no sense that they haven't been able to work this out. They've made a dog's dinner of this, a bit like Trey Hendrickson. And the Bengals situation, it's probably going to cost them a lot more money as a consequence if they want to get stuff done. But he's requested a trade. And then I think the next day, there was the bombshell that Micah Parsons had requested a trade. Again, another situation where the Dallas Cowboys have completely fudged this one. And he has requested a trade. Jerry Jones says to Cowboys fans, don't panic. It's just a negotiating thing. But there was an article saying that effectively Jones won't speak to the agent of Micah Parsons, who is the agent who used to represent Earl Thomas, who before he became pretty much the most powerful agent in the NFL, once rang me up to complain about something I wrote about Earl Thomas's holdout, which was quite an afternoon. Anyway, so that's all going on. So, Robbie, very simple question. I'm going to go to one player, and then we'll go to the other one afterwards. So first of all, we're going to start with Micah Parsons. If there was any chance of a deal, and I personally think there is no chance that Dallas are going to let Micah Parsons go. But if there was a chance, would you trade for him? Would you set a record for a pass rusher contract trading for him? And what would you think about giving up?
Absolutely, yes, I would trade for him in a heartbeat. You're 26-year-old defensive end, that the pass rusher that you don't find on the market that often, and he's a guy that we would all love to have. So I would not hesitate to give up exactly what we gave up for Jamal Adams, which seems like a lot, right? Yeah, I would do it in a heartbeat. I think he's a phenomenal player, and how great would that defense be if he was on the line?
So to give him, if you were going to trade for him, though, Robbie, you would have to give him at least $42 million because the current highest paid edge rusher in the league is TJ Watt on a $41 million a year contract. So let's say it's in that sort of $42 to $45 million a year range. Would you be comfortable paying that to Micah Parsons?
I mean, yeah, it's steep, but I mean, you see teams finagle the cap all the time, and we got a lot of cap space, so I wouldn't be too worried about that. We don't have we're not paying a quarterback a crazy amount of money. We got a pretty good deal, I think, on Sam Darnold, and I think if you're gonna strike, this is a move you're gonna make. But I'm in the same boat. I don't think the Cowboys are giving him up, so I don't think it's going to happen. It's fun to talk about, but I don't think it's realistic.
So his base salary for this year is $24 million. The Seahawks currently they're one of the few teams that could take that on. They have $35 million in effective cap space. So the teams that could realistically take that on, I would argue, are the Titans, the Jets, maybe, possibly the Packers, although the Cowboys trading to the Packers seems a little bit fanciful. The Chargers, Cardinals, Raiders, Niners, Lions, and Patriots. The thing that the Seahawks have the advantage over a number of teams, though, is that the following year, they have $53.2 million in effective cap space. That seems low to me. I don't know why that's gone down. Maybe Curtis, somebody could explain that to me. But they used to be at the top end of the effective cap space and no longer. The Raiders are very much near the top of that, and they are a team that might be willing to make a big splash, although they've got a lot of things they need to do, including finding a quarterback from somewhere for the future, because Geno Smith is getting up in age. So, so there we go. So that's how much it would cost. Adam, same sort of questions. Would you do the deal for the player based on his talent and what he's achieved? Would you be willing to pay him more than $42 million a year? And if you were to do a trade, what's the kind of price you would be comfortable with?
So whenever I have like a crackpot theory about stuff, I always run it past Curtis in DMs, because if it's anything financial, I always want to check that I'm on the right track. Normally I'm miles off, and Curtis gives me an explanation as to why I'm completely wrong. And I was thinking, as we were messaging briefly after the trade request came down, and I sent Curtis a message saying, would I be right in saying that we could pretty much afford Micah Parsons over the next 3 years, but it would just knacker any chance we'd want for drafting a quarterback because of what it would take to give up? And normally I get a long response, and I just got a response that said yes. So I guess I think I wouldn't be uncomfortable making the deal, but I think if you're going to do it, you basically are signing up to the fact that your quarterback for the next 3 to 4 years is on your roster, unless you can find like another Russell Wilson diamond in the rough. So I think the question is more, if you frame it that way, forget the money and the picks, because you can kind of always get those back. But it's are you going to be okay with that? But then your quarterbacks are going to be Sam Darnold or maybe Jalen Milroe for the next 3 years. Like, is that going to make you more likely to be a winner than sort of re-entering the rat race of trying to find your guy if you don't think it's Darnold? So I guess that opens another, I think, interesting side of the conversation, really.
So on the quarterback thing, I suppose you could kind of look at it in a couple of ways. I don't know what they feel about the quarterbacks they've got. They may well see that Darnold is someone they're going to wait and see on Darnold, as we all are. That's why the contract is structured the way it is. But they might think, well, we've got him and Jalen Milroe, so that's a couple of bites at it. And who knows what they think about Jalen Milroe? But they may feel like, well, he's not one for now, but he could be one for the future. And although you're absolutely right, it will make it extremely difficult to draft a quarterback early if you trade for Micah Parsons, because I think it'd cost at least 2 firsts and possibly 2 seconds. And that's for the next couple of years. So you're not going to be picking in the first 2 rounds in 26 and 27, that's for sure. It may be 3 ones rather than anything to do with seconds. I think he's that good a player. Next year, the quarterback class, these I'll just sort of run through the tentative grades that I have on the quarterbacks who are eligible for next year that I've at least watched and studied. I think Garrett Nussmeier will go in round 1. I think he will probably get, going into this season, I would say he's probably more of a top 45 player than a top 10, but I think he will go in round 1. Drew Aller has got a chance to go in the first round, but again, I don't think he's one of those surefire top 10 talents. Carson Beck for me is a nothing. I'm not keen on Carson Beck, and I don't think he will be a starting. And I don't think he expects that anymore, which is why he's gone to Miami to get a payday. Sam Levitt, I'm not sure about. I'm just not sure about that. And then you've got the sort of the Tyler Van Dykes day 3 because of all the stuff that's happened with him. Billy Edwards probably day 3. Miller Moss day 3. Fernando Mendoza, I think, is going to cap off at around 3 at best. He's just moved on. Cade Klubnik, I think it just looks like a 3 of a round 3, round 4 type to me. We'll see. So the point I'm making is I don't think there's a quarterback next year that I would necessarily want to sort of pine for at this point. So does that sort of affect things at all, Adam? If you sort of look at, let's just assume that that's a fair assessment, and we've got a whole football season of college football to go. So that's going to change things. But let's just say that the next quarterback class, the Seahawks have decided, someone's put the Norris Sellers, we need to see a lot more of him. He's played for 1 year. Let's see how he gets on this year. I've not studied him enough to give him a grade yet. Let's assume that next year's quarterback class is not a spectacular one, Would that, when it comes down to sort of, well, maybe 2027 could be the answer or not, does that change your opinion at all? If it's really going to come down to just one draft class that you might be sort of, well, I wish we were there, sort of thing.
I mean, firstly, it's outrageous you haven't got at least 3 big boards done at this stage. And you should have 1,000 college players. I want grades. Come on. I mean, you're slacking.
Yeah, you're embarrassing me, man. Come on.
We come on this show because apparently, like, it's got some status because of you. Like, there's draft stuff and
freaking amateur hour now.
I know. I don't know, Robbie. We meant to consider.
I know. It's an Adam and Robbie show from going.
I think our talents to South Beach or something. I mean, this is just.
Jared Stanger's out there still. We're going to listen to him.
At least there's someone. But I actually think the way in which you just asked the question kind of makes me settle on the fact that I think the overall package, including the future negotiation of your franchise that you'd be making to trade for Trey Hendrickson, would be a lot more appealing for me than Micah Parsons as an overall thing. I think the quality of player gap is not as big as the risk of what you'd be putting the franchise through if things weren't working out at quarterback. That's my personal view on it. I just think 2 first rounders on a defensive player is just too much overall. If it happened, I'm not going to come on here and complain. Like, it'd be super exciting because at least it's a player unlike Adams who can affect every play, can be a wrecker for every single play. But it's just a bit too rich for my blood, especially when I look at the money involved. And I think you could find a pretty happy medium or happier medium with Hendrickson that, maybe you're not in the race for quarterbacks next year, but if you can get 2-3 years out of him and your team is good enough that you need 1 or 2 to help you over the edge, I think that's where I'm settling.
So my take on this, and people won't be surprised because they may have read the article. If you're watching the stream, you may have read the article already. I am in favor of it, and I'll explain why. I just think it's so rare that a player of Parsons' quality becomes available. And I don't think he's available. My opinion is I don't think he's going anywhere. The Cowboys are not forced to do anything. He can say he wants a trade. The Cowboys can still say, you ain't going anywhere. And they could franchise him next year. They could franchise him again. I don't think Micah Parsons is going to be leaving the Dallas Cowboys. And it's not often that players try and force the way out of Dallas anyway. I think this is a power play. I think he probably does intend to stay there. He is a Cowboys fan. I just don't see a way that he leaves Dallas at all. I think this is all posturing and negotiating, and it's just an aggressive form of negotiating through the media. So I don't think he's going anywhere. But he is 26 years old, and he's only just turned 26. He has 52.5 sacks in 4 years. In the 4 years that he has played in the NFL, he's been an All-Pro 3 times. He has 9 forced fumbles in his career. So it's not just the sacks. He creates turnovers. He had a 90 grade, according to PFF last season. And he is somebody who I think he could win you games on his own almost. He's almost that kind of quality, as much as a defensive player can be. And when you look at the defense, I think you've got some really good interior defensive linemen, a potential star there in Leonard Williams in this defense with talent around him. You have good linebackers, good cornerbacks, good safeties. The one thing they haven't got is an elite edge rusher. And we've seen the Niners and the Rams get to a Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo, Brock Purdy, Jared Goff, and aging Matthew Stafford at quarterback. And the reason that those 4 quarterbacks got there was because of good scheming on offense and because their defenses were fantastic. And they had stars, Aaron Donald and Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, for example, those kinds of players. And as much as anyone, I should say, wants the Seahawks to find franchise quarterback, legit, elite, Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Lamar, those kind of players. I want to see us a homegrown quarterback do that as much as anybody. But it just might not come along. We could be waiting 10, 20 years for that. We could be saying we've got to keep our draft picks because the next draft might provide that player. they're incredibly hard to find. And often you stumble into them as franchises rather than take them. And it's not like the Bengals and they just pick first overall and they get a legend. Sometimes it's just you need a bit of fortune in there as well. I'm not sure you're going to be able to get that. But if Parsons became available, you can go and get him. You just know what you're going to get there. And you put him in this team. And I think that rather than waiting, I think if you wait for a quarterback, you could be waiting years. And we could be sort of sat here saying, I wish there could be a contender again. I wish there could be a contender again for years. I think if you put Parsons in this team now, the defense could be the best in the league, could be one of the best we've seen in a long time. And that could be what ultimately pushes the Seahawks into Super Bowl contention. So that's why I would do it. And as you say, I was not a fan of the Jamal Adams trade because I didn't think he justified it and he was a safety. I think this is different because he's a pass rusher. So I would do it. I would pay him the massive contract. I would be prepared to take the risk that Sam Darnold or Jalen Milroe or somebody else has to be the QB of the future. But I'd be prepared to do that. Robbie, you've heard two different arguments there. As Adam, you said you're in favor of it. Has Adam shifted your opinion at all?
No, I still think I'm in favor of it. I think the argument for the quarterback situation, I think when you're looking at college quarterbacks and you're thinking, well, next year maybe we could get our guy. I mean, how long have we been doing that though, really? We do that almost every year. But I think you would have told me last year before the season started that Cam Ward would have been the first pick overall. I would have said you're high. There ain't no way he's going to be. First of all, he's going to Miami, which, Mario Cristobal is the worst, in my opinion, one of the worst football coaches in the league. But you're talking about it's just a crapshoot. I mean, Joe Burrow came out of nowhere and had a great year for LSU, and then he was a number all over. It could happen. I would hate to play my fortunes on a future what if. And you got a chance. Micah Parsons is an elite premier talent at a premier position. I'd go for it. I would go for it. This kind of one of those roll the dice, see what happens. I mean, I saw someone come out. Sorry, I'm not going to be able to give you credit because I'm not going to scroll all the way back. Someone said, you're risking injury and he's one play away from not being. But that's with everything, right? Like, yeah, he could. Lots of things could happen. I think as far as the salary cap, obviously Curtis would know best. And Adam, kudos to you for reaching out to Curtis on that. I might have to steal that idea and do that so I don't look like a fool next time I come on here and say something. But yeah, I think it's worth the risk for me. I would be willing to pay the high cost to get a premier player like that.
And Adam, have the arguments that either Robbie and I shifted your opinion at all, or are you still feeling like this is not one for me, that you're not in favor of this?
If it happened, I'd come on and celebrate it because it would be fun. And ultimately, that's one of the main reasons we want to watch our team, because it'd be really fun to see. I just think if you set the baseline at the Jamal Adams fee from a pick standpoint, so at least 2 firsts, let's say 2 firsts and then 2 other picks from second and third rounds for the next year or two. It just feels like a lot with the money. Again, it's not my picks, not my money, so I wouldn't care, and I'd celebrate the fact they've done something really fun, and it would make the team better. So that's cool. It just strikes me as a little bit rich for my blood, but as I say, it's not my resources, so I would celebrate it. But I could see why it may be too much for some people.
I just think there's no chance of it happening, and I'll sort of reinforce that again because it just doesn't happen. The NFL is not a league where star players get traded. This isn't like the NBA where a GM wakes up one day and does something that is quite ridiculous, and everybody hates him for it. But this is a very different league, and typically the top star players just don't move. I don't understand why Dallas would do that. It just makes no sense for them. They have a tendency to let these things drag on, and then at the last minute they get a deal done. So with Dak Prescott, I think they got the deal done the day of the new season beginning, or was it the day before last year?
I was at the tailgate for the Denver game, and my mate Stu said to me, "Oh, Dak Prescott signed his deal." Like it all came. Tyreek Hill got arrested on the same day. Like as this tailgate was happening, it was all just. It was ridiculous.
So there we go. So that they're used to sort of leaving things late on. I would imagine that something similar might happen with Micah Parsons, that we get to the opening weekend and he signed a new contract. It would make no sense for the Dallas Cowboys to trade him away. They would get very little benefit from that, and I don't. Even if they were prepared to trade him away, I can't imagine them trading him to a team in the NFC. So I know I've written about it. I think everybody's talked about it. It's one of those topics that you kind of you touch on, but to me, you aren't doing it justice to talk about this unless you accept the extreme unlikely nature of him being dealt. So don't see it happening at all, and I don't. I'm up for it, but I don't see it happening. So let's move on to Terry McLaurin. Robbie, I wrote about this the other day as well, and I'll sort of reiterate my thoughts on that one too. What are your thoughts on the idea of going after Terry McLaurin, which I still think a deal for him is unlikely as well, because it would make little sense for the Commanders to let him go. But it's probably more likely simply because of where he's at in his career, age, and all of that.
Yeah, I struggle with this one. It's a little more complex when you're thinking about Terry. I mean, he's almost 30, right? And so you look at him, and I think he's also one of those wide receivers that's like kind of vastly underrated. Like he's just a really good receiver. He's consistent, does all the things that you need a player to do. But I saw that he was looking at wanting like 30 mil plus. I just don't know if I'm really ready to pay that much for a wide receiver. And that's not to downplay wide receivers, but I mean, we're going to have to pay JSN at some point. I think he would immediately improve the wide receiver core. He'd immediately improve the offense. I think he would be a great fit, a great scheme fit. Everything about him I like, his leadership, everything. I just don't know if I'd be willing to give up the draft picks and the money for a 30-year-old wide receiver, personally.
Adam, thoughts on a possible trade for Terry McLaurin?
The only thing I would say is that I'm often surprised by how little it ends up taking to trade for players that are slightly older. Like I feel like Calais Campbell has been traded 17 times for like 6th round picks. And I've always watched like, whoa, that doesn't feel like anything at all. So I mean, I'd love a player like that. We can afford him. I do think he's going to want DK Metcalf money. So you traded DK Metcalf away because you weren't sure about whether you wanted to pay him that. So you need to be very, very sure you've got a better player on your hands. If you do that, I think probably you do. But if DK cost a 2nd round pick at 27, then it probably shouldn't cost much more than a 3rd round pick to get him. But again, I don't know why the Commanders would do that. I kind of hope he stays there. I think it's a good fit for a team that are on the up, that look like a fun team. It'll be obviously they're competing with us in a way for the conference, but they were a really watchable team last year, and it was a good fit everywhere. But I'm not sure. I would definitely take the player, but I'm just not. I have no concept of what I expect it to cost, because it constantly surprises me how little these players seem to cost on the trade market.
Yeah, it would be interesting to know what the Commanders actually want for him. His contract is expiring, so he's in a position where they're not in a great bargaining place where they can go, well, we want this, this, and this. You're either going to pay him or you're going to trade him and get the best offer you can get, which is what the Seahawks did with Metcalf, and they ended up getting a late 2nd round pick. And he's a bit older, so you might be looking at a 3rd rounder plus, or well, maybe it will just cost exactly what DK Metcalf cost. I don't know. But I really like Terry McLaurin. I've always liked Terry McLaurin. I gave him a 1st round grade coming into the draft. Couldn't believe he lasted to round 3. I thought he was really impressive going into the league. I am in favor of the trade. I'll explain why, because I don't think a lot of people would like to trade for Micah Parsons for understandable reasons. I don't think there'll be as much hype among Seahawks fans for McLaurin. But his base salary for this season is $15.5 million. So you can easily afford that. His current contract extension that he has with Washington was for 3 years. So you could theoretically sign him for 3 more years after this. That would take him to 33 years of age. It's just the wrong sign of being comfortable with that. But I do think he's the kind of player who is durable enough to feel confident about. He has not missed a game since 2020. Like, he is an Iron Man when it comes to getting out on the field. He has A+ character, as we mentioned. He is one of the most respected people in the league. He is a captain, a leader. You bring him into your locker room, he elevates everything. It's another really experienced, strong mind to bring into that locker room. Even when the Commanders were toiling at quarterback, so you look at Jaden Daniels, and he had a good year, 1,000 yards last year. I think he got 13 touchdowns. The quarterbacks he played with in Washington before Jaden Daniels arrived were Sam Howell, Taylor Heineke, and Carson Wentz. And despite playing with those guys, he has 5 straight 1,000-yard seasons. And the only time he hasn't reached 1,000 yards was as a rookie, when he had 919 and 7 touchdowns. This guy has been durable. He has produced. And then the one thing the Seahawks probably lack is a deep threat. So I went onto PFF and had a look to see what his yardage was like and his targets were like last season. He actually received a perfect 99.9 grade on throws more than 20 yards last season. And the only 2 other players who matched that were DK Metcalf and George Pickens. So that's good company. Only Jamar Chase, who might be the best receiver in the league, and Rashad Bateman scored more touchdowns of plus 20 yards. They had 6. McLaurin had 5. And his 12 receptions of plus 20 yards ranked 6th in the NFL. So you don't really think of McLaurin as a burner, but those numbers suggest he is an excellent deep threat and extremely productive and reliable. So I get that he's older. He is going to turn 30 in September, and he is going to be expensive. I think the one thing that makes the contract more understandable or acceptable is that because of the 5th-year option on Smith and Jackson Smith-Njigba's contract, he is not going to sign a new deal probably until 2027, and the cap hit for Jackson Smith-Njigba that really explodes is not going to kick in until 2028. So you could pay McLaurin up to that point, and then when he either gets cheaper or moves on, then you're paying Jackson Smith-Njigba. So you're effectively just paying one receiver a large contract until that point. But there's 2 sort of counters to that I'd make as well. One, does this system require you to go and acquire someone like Terry McLaurin at this age? I'm not sure it does, because the Shanahan system in the past has done very, very well with no-name receivers or working on particular, types of receiver. So it may be that the Seahawks don't. I think there's a lot of people out there talking about there may be one short at receiver. I've touched on that a little bit myself, but I don't know if they necessarily need to go and get a big name and pay them $30 million to do that with a trade price coming in as well. And then the other thing is just how much people have talked positive about Torrey Horton over the last couple of days. There's been so much positive stuff around him that you kind of think, well, rather than trading for Terry McLaurin and blocking the path for Horton to get meaningful reps, maybe you should try and see if Horton can be the next 5th-round Puka Nacua type who falls later than he should do. So I am somewhat in favor of it, but I think it would have to be a good deal for the Seahawks. And I think given over the last 2 days, Torrey Horton's got a lot of hype there, I'd probably go against it right now and go back on the article I wrote a few days ago. Do you have got any reaction to that there, Robbie? Because he's a great player. He's an underrated player for me. I don't know what the Commanders are doing, but I think I want to see Horton before I make any decision on Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the the quarterbacks that he played with, and I'm glad you did, because I kind of forgot to mention that as well. I mean, that's something that he's been so reliable with so many different offensive coordinators, different quarterbacks, all these different things. So he's, like I said, phenomenal player. I just don't know if we need him or if I want to pay someone that much money. I think for me, if I was going to do the deal, it's going to sound kind of douchey, but I'd almost do it just to block him from going to San Francisco or something, because I would rather have him on our team than him going to San Francisco. That team needs wide receiver bad, right? So that's where I think some of that I would like to see, but I just don't know. I would not be mad about it. Like Adam said, if we made that trade I'd come on here and I'd celebrate it and be happy for it because we made a move, and I think that'd be, that's fun, and it makes it exciting, and to see what he could do, that's awesome. I just don't think it's something I would want to give the resources to right now.
So what Robbie said there, Adam, was that, to keep a player away from the Niners, if the Niners were interested in Micah Parsons, how would you feel about that? Or do you think they've got their quarterback? Or would you sort of think, I'd rather stop him going there?
I'd never even considered the idea of blocking someone else. That's interesting. I mean, the Niners don't get a lot wrong when it comes to players, particularly on the defensive line. I think they deserve a huge benefit of the doubt. So if they were looking to go for someone like that, then yes. And you would think that we'd have more than enough resources to outbid a team like San Francisco. Yeah, that's interesting. I think I'd be more inclined to do that, the blocking job on Parsons than McLaurin, because I think the exponential difference that one would make across the board, that Parsons would be disastrous for the Niners to get. Whereas if they got McLaurin, we've kind of been there and seen that, with the receivers they've had. But yeah, that's interesting. What would you do?
I mean, I'd trade for him anyway. But I think the thought of Nick Bosa and Micah Parsons playing here for the next 5 years terrifies me.
Yeah,
and just as they've kind of feel like they've peaked a little bit, and now they to me feel a little bit like Seahawks 2017. Like they've had the best, they've given it a good go, but now they're probably going to need to reset, and they're maybe kicking the can down the road a little bit like Seattle did. And if they do that, I think it'd be like, wow, though actually they're potentially back in the mix in the NFC, potentially favorites again. And I would do it for that reason alone, really, to bring him to Seattle instead, and just say, not so fast. We fancy a dig at this, at being the best in this division. So I'd go with that. I think, to sort of touch on that generally though, Robbie, I am of a mindset now that I would quite like the Seahawks to be aggressive if they can be. I do think there's opportunities there. And the one thing we keep saying about Seattle is that they have a lot of good players, but they don't have many great players. I think if there was an opportunity to go and get a great player, proven quality, great player, and try and push yourselves forwards and accelerate where you want to get to. Because whenever we talk about it, and I think other people, I don't watch every podcast, but I suspect there's a lot of people there that think Seattle's on the right path, but this year might be a year too early, that maybe in the future they can grow into a more rounded contender if certain players take a next step. I'd love to be able to sort of turn around and go, no, now this feels like a winner. This feels like someone who could get to an NFC Championship game. And if you get there, then who knows, you could end up in the Super Bowl. So are you of that mindset too? Are you in an aggressive mindset now? I'm not really too worried about protecting draft picks. I don't want to do anything stupid and reckless. Absolutely not. But I'm also not saying do not trade anything at any cost. Got to keep all your picks. Let's have a pick in every round again next year. We've got to do that. That's how you're going to build. I think this team's now at a point where, look, you've had all these draft picks over the years. Maybe it is time to be a little bit more aggressive now if needs be.
Yeah, for Micah Parsons, I'm 100% in for being aggressive. Elite talent, premier position, young, 26, proven commodity. You make that trade. I think it's interesting that Adam brought up the point about the draft capital, because I didn't really think about what would it really take to trade for the wide receiver, and we did only give up a second. Aaron, we only got a late second for DK Metcalf. Maybe it would only take a fourth, and then I'm more interested, right? And again, I don't really need to worry about the money. It's not my money I'm playing with, but I think it's interesting. That makes it more appealing to me. I don't know, for in my head, for some reason, it was like something more that. I just I don't know. I'm not sure if I really want to give up that draft capital for it. It makes it more intriguing. But yeah, I think if you can go out and get an elite player at an elite position, yeah, go for it. Be aggressive. I'm down for that.
The other thing that made me consider here is this. Brady Henderson talked about why they couldn't Noah Fant, and that at the time that they did, And one of the reasons he highlighted was that if he gets to the season, he guarantees his contract, and that it's not so much the cap space Seattle wanted, because they had a lot of that already. It was the cash. And that sort of made me think, yeah, because we've got to remember here, this isn't an ownership group that is in the same place as, say, the Broncos or the Commanders. Recently bought the franchise, in the first flush of their ownership, throwing money around. Like the Broncos just signed Cortland Sutton to a new contract. You would have expected the Commanders to be a bit spendier than they have been maybe with McLaurin, but still. And Seattle's in a place where they might have to sell the team in a few years' time, and that they might not be as cash rich as some other teams at the moment. And if they are going to sign extensions to players, not necessarily Charles Cross that we've talked a lot about already, but like Brady talks often about Kobe Bryant getting a new deal. And then sort of in the next 12 months, you are going to have to do something with Charles Cross potentially, and Ken Walker and Boya Mafe and others. So if that is the case, they're going to get a lot of that cash that goes into their bank accounts right off the bat. Have you got the cash, the disposable cash, to give to an outside player right now, especially someone like Parsons, who is going to want major guarantees right off the bat, and maybe a big signing bonus and stuff like that. So you might not be able to do that. It's hard to feel that way, Adam, because you kind of just look at cap space and you say, but cash does matter to teams, and they don't always have a lot to throw around. It's one of the reasons why the Bengals always struggle to get things done and always look a bit messy. But the Seahawks are not necessarily one of those franchises that have loads and loads of disposable cash right now.
Do you not reckon they are? I mean, I was always under the impression that, obviously the businesses that they own and run would imply that they were quite cash rich. I mean, maybe not. I mean, I know that obviously the Bengals own is sort of they're a sort of a legacy family that I think a lot of their wealth comes from being the owners of the Bengals. Because I don't get the impression, well, obviously not, that Paul Allen's group is not wealthy because they own the Seahawks.
I don't know how much access they have to the money, though.
Okay.
So when they inherited the money, I'm not sure. I mean, I could be completely wrong on this, but I'm not. I don't think it just, when Paul Allen passed, sadly, I don't think the money just transferred to Jody Allen or the people running Vulcan, and it's do what you want with it, really, even to spend on contracts with the Seahawks. I think it's all sort of tied up, and the money is accounted for in certain ways, and he's got a lot of philanthropy that he wants to support. They're selling the Blazers. There was always this talk that they have to sell both teams eventually, and I'm not sure how that works, and that it might be that the team effectively gets a decent chunk of money to, perhaps per year or whatever, to run and to be able to do things like spend big contracts. And if Charles Cross does sign a big contract in the next 12 to 18 months, and if there's a few others who do that as well, they've obviously paid Leonard Williams and people like that, and Sam Darnold, there's obviously money there. It's just, do they have cash right now to go and make a huge splash on top of developing their own, keeping their own, and moving on? I don't know the answer to that. Could be completely wrong. I'm speculating a little bit. I'm just not sure. And people saying, well, I've seen in the comments there, Jody Allen is one of the wealthiest owners in the NFL. Jody Allen's inherited the wealth, but the wealth does not, like I said, as far as I'm aware, has not just passed on to Jody Allen to do what she wants with it. That's not really how it's worked. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but someone said, is it in a trust? I was always in the impression that the money was accounted for, and it's not just for Jody to do what she wants with them. Again, I'm not Jody Allen. It'd be nice to have Jody Allen's money, even if she hasn't got all of it, but I have not. Right.
Sorry, just a last thing on that one. We spoke last week how much expectations can change during the season, and of all the sports, this is one that something can happen that can really alter your perspective. Without there's too many Seahawk writers that are so obsessed with other teams in the NFC West that their Twitter feeds are more like their reporting on other teams and the Seahawks, and it drives me insane. But if Matthew Stafford is seeing a back surgeon for the second time in a fortnight, and we probably agree that the Niners should be on a decline unless, coaching, they can really do something quite miraculous. And I don't think we've got that much respect for the Cardinals. Would you have any or give any credence to the view that maybe, this could be the year where if you do go and make a mega splash, you give yourself a good chance to maybe go and win 6 divisional games, which is almost a fait accompli to, well, obviously at least 1 home game, if not 2. And I don't know, maybe you just have to strike when the iron becomes hot for yourself, because it doesn't always come around. And maybe, is there any chance that you could see Schneider and McDonald looking around thinking, we're never going to have a better chance than we do right now?
Yeah, I agree. I think that possibly is how they feel. And I'd be surprised if they haven't contacted Dallas for that reason. Because you look at the NFC right now and it is wide open. And the more I think about it, and I don't know if I'm just talking myself into this because I like the idea of having a distraction in my life for the next 3 or 4 months. I think the Seahawks can have a really good season. I think they can be one of the teams. And 12 months ago, if you'd have said to anybody, I fancy the Minnesota Vikings to win 14 games this year, they'd have been laughed at. That'd have been a hilarious load of old nonsense. And yet they did, with Sam Darnold at quarterback, funnily enough. And yes, they've got Justin Jefferson, but can you name a star player on Minnesota's defense? There's not really anybody there. They lost Daniil Hunter. And yet they got to 14 wins. It can't all be because of Justin Jefferson. And I think he missed some games last year as well. So they've got a good coach and stuff like that. But, they got to 14 games and they cocked things up. But the Packers are there or thereabouts every year, and there's nothing that special about them. And, the Eagles we talked about last week, they kind of came good after a difficult start. And who else is there really? Like the Rams got into the playoffs and suddenly looked like the team that could be the ones that make a run. So I think the Seahawks have got a really good chance. I'm not saying they're going to get to the Super Bowl, but if they can run the ball and play great defense, then I think they will be a pain in the arse to play next season or this season now. And I fancy them to do something. I fancy this to be an interesting year. I hope I'm right. I'm excited to watch this team. I think they could do something. And it's wide open. They're all the good quarterbacks that are, the Burrows, the Allens, the Mahomes, Lamar, they're all in the AFC. So they're still going to play those teams sometimes, but not in the playoffs. Not until the final game. So the playoffs are going to be wide open again. So I feel good about this, Robbie.
Yeah, you make a really good point about that, and I just want to say this one thing. I think let's just entertain the idea that Dallas would consider trading Micah Parsons. Do you think they'd really trade him in the NFC?
No, I don't think they trade him at all.
I know, I agree. I'm saying let's entertain the idea that they've come to the conclusion that they're going to. I don't think that their first choice would be a team in the NFC. I think they're going to send them to like the Jets, who are looking for star power. They're looking for, someone to give them recognition and make them. I don't think they would even consider trading someone in the
Raiders.
The Raiders. Yeah.
Maybe the Rams have got $73.7 million next year.
That's my point. Is I just don't think. I think if Dallas was to be serious about trading Micah Parsons, which I also agree. I don't think they're going to, but if they did, chances are they're going to look for a team in the AFC.
Patriots would make sense because they've drafted a young quarterback. They've got a load of cap space. They've got a defensive-minded head coach. That would be the one that would feel quite interesting there. I don't think he'd want to go there, though.
He doesn't get a choice, though. He doesn't have a look at.
I think if you're going to trade someone like that, he's probably going to have some kind of a say in it, though, isn't he?
Yeah, maybe. It's just
because if
money.
If they rang up and said, "Well," he says, "Well, we're going to," he goes, "I don't want to go there. I'm not signing a contract with you. You're not going to give 3 first-round picks up, are you?"
Yeah.
So, but still, I don't think they would, Robbie, to answer your question. But what about the overall thought, though, Robbie, that Adam pitched there? Is this a time to go for it, do you think? I think it might be.
No, I'm in the same boat. I'm very excited about this team. I think I'm excited to see what they can do on offense. I'm very excited about what they've done so far on defense, how well they've drafted. I didn't get to comment on the Snyder thing, so I'm excited that Snyder got extended. So yeah, I think it's all coming together. I'm really excited to kind of watch this team this year. And last year we kind of got a sense of it, right? We got a sense of being excited for the team again, new head coach, new changes happening. And I think this year is just adding to that development of Mike McDonald as the head coach and the things that they've done and how, the way that they can improve and just kind of continue to see how they're going to progress going forward. I'm excited about this year.
So, Adam, to put your own question back on you, do you feel that way? Do you sort of sense there may be an opportunity arriving for Seattle here that maybe one or two clever moves, whether that's before the season or during, could give them half a chance? Because who are the teams? Who is obviously far better than Seattle? Who is the team that you think, yeah, they're on a different level here? The Eagles, maybe, but they've got we're the defending champion kind of thing going on, where they often, teams that in that position don't have a great year the following year. It's quite hard to get back to the Super Bowl. But if they don't have any of those problems, and I don't think Nick Sirianni is an amazing head coach either, so I'm not convinced that he's going to handle that particularly well. But if it's them, if they can get through that, is there anybody else in this whole NFC?
No, the way I look at it is if I could transport you straight away to the divisional round and say, you're going on the road, and we're going to sort of spin the wheel on the teams, and we'll have 3 spins. And, if it lands on that one, you can either spin again or you go, like when we played FIFA as kids and you pick 3 teams or whatever. I think the Eagles are the only team that if said I have to go on the road to Philadelphia, I would say, I think I might spin again here. I just, maybe Green Bay, because I've always got a bit of a stigma about going to Green Bay. I think, that's you don't want to be going there if you can avoid it. But there's no one else really. Washington walked into Detroit and murdered the Lions on their own field. I think you if you were offered to go to the Commanders, you'd take that now. Divisional games never easy, but I think the way the Rams and the Niners are now constructed, you'd say yes. Whereas a couple of years ago, you'd say no chance. I'll spin again. So yeah, I just don't think it's. You just stumble onto years sometimes that become opportunities, and I think this really could be one. Now look, there are going to be teams like the Commanders, Tampa Bay, that will be having exactly the same conversations that we are right now, but one of them has to elevate themselves, and why not us to coin that silly phrase?
I mean, that's the point as well. It's not to suggest that Seattle is clearly better than a lot of teams either, because Tampa Bay, if the Seahawks had to go to Tampa Bay in a playoff game, I'd fancy Tampa Bay to win that game, probably. So it's not that the Seattle is noticeably better. We're not being homers here. I just feel like it's wide open. You could end up in a playoff situation where you can't really call any of the games, or you automatically just go to the home team because it's in the balance. It kind of feels like a 50-50 game going into it. And the Seahawks are one of the many teams in the NFC who will fancy the chances. And I suppose that's what the point that you're making there, Adam, is can you get something that gives you that little bit of an extra chance to win some of these 50-50 games and go on a run to get your defense hot at the right time? Now, one thing I watched bizarrely this weekend, I think I was looking for a distraction, was YouTube suggested the 2005 season NFC Championship game. And I watched it, not the whole thing all the way through, because it's 2.5 hours without the commercials. But I skimmed through it. And the amazing thing for me was just how little, big name, star power either team had, really. Obviously, Seattle had Walter Jones and Steve Hutchinson and Sean Alexander at his best and Matt Hasselbeck. But there was no elite receiver. Darrell Jackson was not an elite receiver. And the defense didn't have any star players, elite players. And then for the Panthers, it kind of felt as if they were just relying on Steve Smith. and Jake Delhomme to do something. Jake Delhomme had kind of got hot going into that game, but you didn't look at the Panthers and go, wow, like what a team. And it reminded me that, you kind of have seasons in the NFL where unexpected teams do well, or teams without loads and loads and loads of stars can go on a run. I mean, there was a Super Bowl between the Buccaneers and the Raiders, not that long ago. I suppose it is quite long ago now. Time flies. Where you looked at it and the two bad quarterbacks playing each other and all of that stuff, and the league can chuck that stuff out, Robbie. And you just think, maybe this could be one of those years at least from an NFC perspective, where it is just kind of wide open, and if you've got the ingredients to be tough in the playoffs, running game, defense, you might be all right.
Yeah, I mean, the teams that you mentioned, I actually really like what Adam said about Tampa Bay and them, because they have probably the same ideas, but someone's got to step up and someone's got to take the step, and I think we have all the tools and the ingredients to do that. So I'm really excited for the season, and with first games on Thursday, is that correct? Here we go, getting close.
Yeah, it's Friday for us. It's like 3:00 in the morning, so I'm already going to make a call that I will watch that when I wake up.
Okay.
And then probably on Thursday now, I may well say, "Oh, well, I'll stay up," and then I'll regret it in the morning.
We all know you're going to stay up, so come on.
We'll see. I want to get through the super chats, then I've got one final thing to get into. Martin says, "Do you think we try to trade for Micah Parsons?" I think we've touched on it a bit. What would the cost be if we don't? Do you think we bring in another defensive end? So we've answered the bit about Parsons. Martin, thank you for the super chat. The other defensive end, Brady Henderson thinks they will bring another defensive end in. I don't think that will necessarily be Trey Hendrickson. I think that's going to get sorted out. It's hard to think who the other one could be, though, Robbie. People say like Jadeveon Clowney, but you just don't know how that relationship is, because they've had not a few. They've had a couple of opportunities to re-sign Clowney, and it's never even been speculated, really. There's never been any suggestion that the Seahawks want to go down that road. It was a bit sour how it all sort of ended with him here. And Mike McDonald had him for a year in Baltimore and doesn't exactly seem to be busting a gut to bring him back. So is he the kind of character you want? Like, they've gone all in on the DeMarcus Lawrence, Cooper Kupp types, guys who are going to give absolutely everything, who are going to practice, who are going to chew glass type of mentality. That's not Jadeveon Clowney, is it? So there's him, there's like Zadarius Smith, there's people like that could go after, but it's not a massive list.
Yeah, I'm glad you said Smith, because that's the only other guy that I could really think of. I mean, he's sort of kind of a pass rush specialist. I remember when he was in Green Bay and he was a free agent, I remember we were talking about the possibility of bringing him in. So that'd be exciting. I mean, I don't know how much he would cost or anything, but it'd be someone to put into the mix. I know they're probably going to get somebody else, and they may just wait for a veteran to kind of get cut and maybe kind of on the tail end of his career. But I'm a Calais Campbell type wouldn't be awful. How long we've been banging the drum for someone like that. So
there's nobody else, is there, Adam? I'm not missing any names here. This one from the Volcano Kid says, Brian talked about possibly moving Maffei with picks 1 and 3 for Parsons. Do you see this as a reasonable instead of 2 1s or then on a blue chipper? There is as much chance of Dallas accepting that as there is me finishing this stream, my phone ringing, me answering the phone saying, hello, who is it? And the person on the other end going, it's Sydney Sweeney. Will you take me out tomorrow night, Rob? I have a real thirst to know everything that you think about the upcoming draft class. And then we're going to make sweet love all night long. That is as much chance of happening as the Dallas Cowboys accepting that trade. Robbie, do you have anything to add on that?
How do I follow up with that? No, I don't. If she calls you by any chance, tell her I said hi.
Hang on a minute. No. No, the phone is not ringing. Adam, any thoughts?
Oh, I'm actually crying. That was so funny. When you know someone's going somewhere, I wasn't sure. I didn't know whether you were going to go like, take your hat off and a full your head of flowing locks would come out or something. I didn't see that coming at all, and that was brilliant. I loved it.
No, I didn't know where it was going either, and it went there. Volcano Kid, really appreciate that. That will not get it done. I think you are looking at, like I said, two ones, 2 2s. I think that might even not be enough. You might have to chuck some other things in.
I will comment on that actually now that I'm thinking about it. Just like, I mean, I think this is one of the classic signs of us overvaluing our players, like thinking that they're worth way more. Not saying Maffei's not a good player, but he ain't worth a 1, right? Dallas is going to want another 1, and a Maffei and a third is not going to cut it. Like, that just isn't going to do it. That's overvaluing.
No one in Dallas has ever heard of Boye Maffei.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, ever.
Yeah.
You would have to give up so much more.
Yeah.
It'd have to be I think you'd have to be looking at the Russell Wilson trade and saying that's kind of the ballpark you're looking at with this. There's just no other way. I mean, that trade's not even Jamal Adams level trade, and he's way better than Jamal Adams. So maybe he meant 2 firsts, a third, and Maffei. I don't think that would get it done. Martin says, do you think there's regression from the Lions and the Vikings this season? Vikings are starting a rookie quarterback and the Lions have lost a lot of pieces. I do think that. I think the Lions have also lost a lot of coaches, which is going to affect them. They've lost their Ben Johnson going is going to be a big miss for them, I imagine. Their offense still has Jared Goff at quarterback, so I do think an effective coordinator is needed. Hutchinson's got to come back from his injury. The running game and the creativity, I'm sure, and the toughness will all be there. But I think, Robbie, you just wonder how much longer can the Lions keep going at this sort of physical, tough, relentless pace they've got? Have they missed the boat? Was last year and the year before their chance to get to the Super Bowl? And then the Vikings, I just don't know what to make of them. You don't want to rule them out because of what they did last year. But I'm not a big JJ McCarthy guy. And I just don't think they have enough. I think they've got enough to win any game that they play, but I don't see them in a Super Bowl.
I'm going to say this about the Lions. I do not think I will ever bet against Dan Campbell. That guy seems to know what he's doing, and he gets his players ready to play. After watching the Netflix series Quarterback, which I've said before you guys should both watch, I am convinced that he is a leader of men, and I think he is going to do a phenomenal job of turning this team around. I'm not saying they haven't kind of maybe missed their boat, but I wouldn't sleep on them. I think they're still going to be a good football team.
Adam, Vikings and Lions?
Yeah, I think the Lions will have missed their boat, unfortunately, and I'm gutted because they're such a great story. I love Dan Campbell particularly, and actually I want to come on something quickly that I've just read from one of our mates, Ben Solak, who I know we love so much on this stream, and actually relates to the Vikings, who the Vikings just like never, they could win 17 games by 50 points, and I would just never expect them to do a lick in the playoffs. It's just, I don't know what it is about them. They just don't.
A bit soft.
Yeah, I'm not sure what it is, but I just never take them seriously. So this thing I've just read was Benjamin Solak, our mate, has just ranked the 32 NFL coaching staffs of head coach, offensive and defensive coordinator, and he's got the Vikings at number 1, which I just think like is his classic, like, I must come across as intelligent despite all other conventional wisdom. Do you want to have a guess where the Seahawks and the Raiders numbers are?
Well, I'm imagining the Raiders are ahead of the Seahawks, Adam.
Have a guess.
I'm going to say the Raiders are, do you know, because it's hard when it was just have a guess. And if you don't make the point they're trying to make, it always comes.
You're right. Your first point was right.
Yeah. Are the Raiders significantly ahead of Seattle or 1 ahead? They're significantly ahead of them.
Yep.
So are they in the top 10?
Yeah.
And then I guess the Seahawks are like 23rd or something like that.
So the Seahawks are 16th.
Okay.
And he's got the Raiders at 9th. And I just, like, I'm the least homery person you're ever going to meet when it comes to anyone. But I just could not believe I read that.
You're right, though, Adam. But this is the thing that works now. Person writes piece, puts provocative headline in there that he's put the Vikings at number 1, and people react to it, and he gets a pat on the back because he's got everybody talking again, and he gets to write all of his stuff about why, because he's a smart NFL person, Adam. He knows he knows ball. He knows ball. He's one of the cool kids who knows
likes
ball.
DVOA.
He knows the stats and the tape, so he can put that there. I mean, let's not put Andy Reid as number one because he's only won a bajillion Super Bowls and stuff like that, and crafted the greatest quarterback who maybe has ever lived, and done all of those things. And even when the things are going bad, he still gets them back to the Super Bowl every year and all of that. But no, let's give someone who's not won a playoff game as the number one, with his defensive coordinator, who, as far as I'm aware, has not won a playoff game either. Yeah, and how are they number one, Robbie? How are they number one?
I don't know. It doesn't make any sense. It
is a big old load of bollocks, isn't it? Let's be honest.
Some of these people that get paid to write like full time just pull shit out their ass and see what sticks. It doesn't make any sense.
But he's one of the cool kids, so we have to praise him and say he's amazing all the time. Mm-hmm. Until one of the people who actually played in the league calls him out like they did last season, and everybody laughs and then realizes they don't have to kiss his ass all the time. Right. Anyway, Glenn says, so great to have you guys back. Thank you, Glenn. Much appreciated. Thank you very much. And he sent me a super like as well yesterday, I think, as well. So thank you, Glenn. And PGZ says, this is just for that amazing story. I hope she calls. I laugh out loud. I'd love to say I hope so too, but my wife would probably not be, would probably not accept that, and would be annoyed. Anyway, someone has just referenced a quote from the article. So I pulled up the article by Solak, and the first sentence in the Raiders ranking was, it required an unspeakable amount of personal control to not put the Raiders in the top 5. Oh, dear. Good old Ben. Who is their offensive coordinator? Oh, it's Chip Kelly, isn't it? It's Chip Kelly.
Famed NFL head coach and coach at any level, Chip Kelly.
Can we end by reading the whole thing on the Raiders? Can we just? I'm going to dig it out. I'm going to dig this out. Let me find it. Here we go.
It's from August the 1st.
For some reason, whenever I go on the ESPN website now, it sends me to the Singapore version of the ESPN website. But here we go. Right. So he's got the Giants at 32. The Chiefs at least made number 2. Okay. So you said they were 9th? It required an unspeakable amount of personal control to not put the Raiders in the top 5. There are few head coaches I have more faith in than Pete Carroll, who consistently does the following: gets great performance out of rookies. Must have missed that over the last few years. Prepares backups well. Okay. And adjusts his defensive scheming to the players available. Has he watched any of Pete's last 8 seasons? Adam, was any of that right?
It was aggressively wrong.
Yeah. It's requiring an unspeakable amount of personal control not to swear at what I've just read out there. I also have a huge amount of faith in Kelly. An offensive coordinator role suits him better than the head coaching jobs that overwhelmed him in the mid-2010s, as he won't have control over personnel. Indeed, his offense over the past few years in college at UCLA and Ohio State has become far more oriented to heavier personnel and a diverse running game, the sort of stuff that's cooking in the league right now. Let Chip cook. And finally, 3 words on Patrick Graham, good defensive coordinator. The Raiders rank 2nd in defensive success rate, yada, yada, yada. Of course, they've lost over 5,000 snaps from the unit in free agent departures, and now Christian Wilkins is off the team. But hey, Graham is a good defensive coordinator. So basically, his point is that he has a lot of faith in Chip Kelly based on what he did at UCLA and Ohio State. He seems to have not watched a Seahawks game since 2014. And Patrick Graham is a good defensive coordinator. He's lost all of his players, but he's a good defensive coordinator. That about sums it up there, Robbie. Is that a justified 9th place in your opinion?
I'm just mind boggled by this guy's writing. I'm looking at it now, and this is what he said about the Seahawks. The very first line. This is probably too low for the Seahawks. Can I say that in my own piece?
It's just
what kind of writing is this? This is freaking amateur hour. What happened to ESPN? It used to be so good.
I'm just looking through, to see where he has these people. I mean, even like you could argue that having the Saints 30th is a bit. What I mean, like let's just. This is what the Saints have. Like they have their head coach is a rookie head coach, but he did win the Super Bowl last season as offensive coordinator. Brandon Staley, who the last time was a defensive coordinator, had the #1 defense in the NFL. And Doug Nussmeier is a very experienced and highly rated coach. That's the 3rd worst coaching staff in the NFL. Are you serious? Like that doesn't. The Saints might be crap this year, but it won't be because the coaching staff is the 3rd worst in the NFL. So the Seahawks one is 16th. This is probably too low for the Seahawks. Can I say that about my own piece, as you said, Robbie? Which is. Mike McDonald got this defense roaring down the stretch despite being hamstrung by injuries and personnel issues. Seattle ended the season 5th in points per drive allowed behind 4 emphatic playoff defenses and 6th in explosive play rate surrendered. With an offense that should be better at ball control and sustained drives, the bend not break philosophy will shine next season. They didn't play a bend but don't break philosophy. That's Pete's thing. This is an aggressive attack-minded defense. Doesn't make any sense. The Seahawks made an offensive coordinator change, moving on from Ryan Grubb to hire Kubiak. I mark a year 1 coordinator change against McDonald a bit. Why? Though you could argue it's a good sign that he didn't stick to his decision. Hang on a minute. Right. I mark a year 1 coordinator change against McDonald a bit. Yet Pete Carroll is... What did Pete Carroll do? First year in Seattle? He changed his offensive coordinator. But he trusts him more than anybody else. You could argue it's a good sign.
Also, McDonald did not hire Ryan Grubb.
No, he didn't.
Like, not a chance.
Let's not get facts get in the way of the piece, Adam. Though you could argue it's a good sign that he didn't stick to his decision to ride a drop-back heavy college-inspired spread offense. Well, duh. The Seahawks failed to help their poor offensive line last season, apart from the top 20 pick they used on it, and a new system was needed to account for that personnel limitation. Kubiak looked like the next big thing for a couple of weeks last season in New Orleans before the offensive line, then wide receiver, then quarterback injuries lampooned a fiery start for the Saints offense. He should bring a nice floor as a Shanahan disciple, but the ceiling remains to be seen, especially with offensive personnel that doesn't fit the Shanahan meta all that well, apart from the quarterback who he's coached before and the fact that they have several zone blocking quality linemen on the roster who've been, either handpicked for that in this most recent draft. I just can't be bothered anymore. This is a guy who said that that Michael Penix Jr. did not have a great arm before the draft. And this wasn't like just when he transferred from Indiana and hadn't watched it. This was like just before the draft when he went in the top 10. So, and he said that Michael Penix Jr., who has one of the best arms you'll ever see, did not have a good arm. So, enough. Nothing worries me more about the NFL than the fact that ESPN has just taken over everything. Like, if they're prepared to put this shite out, what are they going to do to Red Zone? Like, it really worries me. This guy will be hosting Red Zone. You watch. It'll be him and some shouty person, and they'll be doing Red Zone together, arguing all the way through it. You watch.
Someone's got a heck of a deal out of their $5 super chat, by the way. They asked a question 20 minutes ago about the Vikings and the Lions, and we've done this. What a great super chat. Well done, you.
Indeed. And also, this has been a great distraction from the final thing I was going to talk about, which was the Seahawks offensive line, which we'll leave for another time. So it's all good. Big thank you to everybody who has sent in a super chat. Really, really appreciate that. And all of you who've watched, great numbers watching live again, which we really appreciate. SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Go and check it out now because Curtis was at Football Fest and he was at training camp the day before, and he's got a couple of great write-ups on the blog now. So make sure you go and check those out. Make sure that you like and subscribe to this video. And if you could leave a comment, it'd be really appreciated. We're doing regular videos again, so you won't want to miss any of those. Don't forget the Seahawks Collective, which will be broadcast live on the Seahawks Collective YouTube channel, which you need to go and find and subscribe to that. But that will be 5 p.m. Pacific time for that live conversation. And Annabelle Hasselbeck will be joining us for the first time in that episode. So big thank you to Adam. Big thank you to Robbie. Until next time, bye for now.